Hey there folks, Mark from Like Minded Lunatics. Thank you for joining me on a Monday music matchup. Now this playlist is very, very simple. Typically we take two songs, two versions of the same song, or two music videos, put them head to head, and see which one comes out on top. But I'm going to change the rules a little bit. Today we're not going to see which one comes out on top, and here's why. I recently read Brian Johnson's autobiography, and Brian Johnson, lead singer of acdc. I was blown away by it. Number one, if you decide to read the book, and I guarantee you will love it, but if you decide to read the book, don't make the mistake I did and actually read it. Get the audiobook, because I didn't know Brian narrates the damn thing, and number one, he is great at capturing his own voice. Started the audiobook, it's fantastic. It's like Brian Johnson just sitting in the room with you, telling you about his amazing life. But get that. But in that book, he really only spends about 3 chapters on acdc, and the majority of it is kind of music in the UK in the late 60s and early 70s, and it's fantastic. And it sent me down a rabbit hole of looking at old music from the 60s and 70s in the UK, and then obviously looking at old video of Brian and Bon Scott. So what I thought we would do today is take a look at 2 of Bon and Brian's biggest hits pre-acdc. Now, I want to make one thing clear. This is why I said it's not a typical one. We ain't going to choose which one's better, because that's an impossible task. It's a fool's task, and we are not going to even entertain the idea. I'm going to try to use an analogy that both my Australian friends and my UK friends would understand. That would be like trying to say that a bacon buddy is better than a sausage roll. You can't do it. If you've had 4 pints and somebody puts a bacon buddy in front of you, you're eating the damn thing and loving it. If they put a sausage roll in front of you, you're eating the damn thing and you're loving it. So we're not going to try to do that, but we do want to get a sense of who these guys were as lead vocalists before they hit acdc. So if you're not familiar, let me give you just a little bit of history. Fraternity was an Australian rock band formed in Sydney in 1970, included members Bon Scott, John Swan, Jimmy Barnes. Their biggest local hit, which we are going to watch today, was a cover of the song Seasons of Change, which peaked at number 1. That was their biggest hit. Fraternity went through various lineups and was eventually renamed as Fang. So if you're familiar with Fang's same band, just renamed with different people, which means a different band. That doesn't make any sense. In any case, that's what we're going to take a look at. Today, we're going to take a look at their song Seasons of Change, which was originally written by Blackfeather. And then we're going to take a look at Geordie, which was Brian Johnson's band pre-acdc. So let me read you a little history on that. Let's see. The Geordie lineup, the original Geordie lineup, included Vic Malcolm, Tom Hill, Brian Gibson, and Brian Johnson. Their first single, Don't Do That, broke into the top 40 of the UK singles charts in December of 1972. Now, the media claimed that Geordie was kind of a Slade ripoff or a Sweet ripoff, but Brian in the book says he wasn't really thinking in terms of glam rock. He was thinking in terms more of like Little Richard and Chuck Berry. So I think you're going to hear a lot of those influences as well. They achieved UK Top 10 status with All Because of You, and had another UK Top 20 hit with Can You Do It. They had several appearances on BBC One, including 15 on Top of the Pops. So they were not just a small band. Geordie actually did pretty well in the UK. So why don't we do this? Let's take a look at Fraternity Seasons of Change first, just because it came out. It came out first. I think this recording is from somewhere around 1973 or 71, 72, 73, somewhere around that. But if anybody knows the exact date of this recording, let me know in the comments. Here we go, Fraternity, Seasons of Change. It is unbelievable to me that in a few years' time, this sweet-looking gentleman, this guy looks like that he would sell fermented vegetables at the farmer's market, doesn't he? Doesn't he look like he would sell you a good pickled okra? And then you would talk to your wife and she'd be like, you know that dude's in a band? Is he for real? That sounds awesome. Let's go see him. That's what he looks like to me. A nice gentleman you might meet at the farmer's market, or the guy at the party that's got one of those cheap sandwich bags full of, or not full, but like there's a little bit of weed in there, and he's willing to share it with you. He's willing to share, and he doesn't complain when you take too big of a hit. He looks like one of them dudes, doesn't he? It's amazing to me that this gentleman, in just a few years' time, would be, well, I'm upper class, high society. It's unbelievable to me that this is the same freaking guy. Isn't it to you? All right, let's go over here and take a look at Geordie, Brian Johnson, Don't Do That. This is from 1973, by the way. I mean, you can almost hear Chuck Berry influence right off the bat, can you not? Those double stops and the slides, that's Chuck, isn't it?
Mama, what you doing to me? Mama, what you doing to me? Yeah. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Well, don't do that.
Now, here's what I'm going to go ahead and say. This blew my mind the first time I heard it. Brian's voice here sounds more like Bon Scott's voice on the ACD albums than Bon's voice sounds like Bon's voice. Does that make sense? Like, what he's doing here sounds way more similar to the Dirty Deeds album than what Bon is doing over here. This, if you let me listen to this and didn't tell me it was Bon, I might go, you know, the way that guy does vibrato sounds like Bon, but I would not. This dude's going to be in ACDC in like 4 years. It's incredible to me, or 3, whatever it is. That's incredible to me. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, obviously, I'm a musical dum-dum, but Malcolm and Angus must have just, what made them think that this guy would be the Dirty Deeds guy? Like, what made them think, you know what, this dude, I think he's going to be able to do some of this, I'm TNT, oh wait, he's going to be doing that stuff. Unbelievable to me.
Mama, what you trying to do? Mama, what you...
All right, I'm sorry, I got to stop it again. That was a great guitar lick, wasn't it?
What you trying to do? What you trying to do? Yeah. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that.
The other thing that occurs to me is
don't do that, don't do that, don't.
Look at the smile on this man's face. And that's one thing that when you read the book that you'll see is that Brian Johnson is just, he appears to be, now obviously he could be putting on a front, doesn't seem to be, but he appears to be a man who just feels blessed to have been able to do everything he's done. And he talks about, at this age, he talks about in the book that this was one of the biggest highlights of his life. The thing that gave him meaning was just having fun with his mates and playing music for people. Enjoyed it immensely. I love seeing the smile on that dude's face. All right, let's go back over to Bon. Now, I just mentioned Brian's demeanor, so let's talk about Bon's a little bit, huh? That swagger's still there, though, isn't it? If you've seen any of the live footage from AC/DC in the late 70s, or late 70s in the UK, one of the things that you'll see is an immensely confident, swaggery lead singer. Like Bon, there's a little bit of danger to that guy, wasn't there? A little bit of danger to him. And he knew what he had. And you can see it right here, can't you? Even though he's singing this kind of prog rocky, almost folky music, you can tell, yeah, you're loving his voice, aren't you? You're loving it. You're loving it, and I know you're loving it. Boy, there's confidence there, and it's so great. Doesn't he look like he makes a good kombucha? I mean, it's so amazing to me that this dude turns into I'm on the highway to hell. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. All right, we're getting the guitar solo. Let's head back over here to Geordie.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Well, don't do that.
Don't these dudes look like they would have been just so much fun to hang out with? I'm sure that the music at the show was great, and them hanging out with them after the show was even greater. Look how happy Brian is.
Grab your partner by the hand.
Now, again, a second ago I said that I feel like that Brian sounds more like Bon here than Bon sounds like Bon. But one of the things that Brian writes about in the book is that, you know, when they recorded Back in Black, they did so, I think it was in the Bahamas, and Angus and Malcolm would record their parts in the morning, and then Mutt would mix stuff down, and then Brian would come in later in the afternoon and he would record his tracks. And he said he didn't hear a completed song. He didn't even hear his completed vocals until he heard the album. So he left the Bahamas just having recorded his portions, and then he went back home. And then it was a good, I can't remember exact amount of time, but it was a good amount of time before he ever heard the finished album. And it was only like a week before it came out that the record company sent it to him. And so Brian doesn't even own a record player at this point. So he gets the record of Back in Black, and he has to go over to a friend's house. And this was a friend that he had played in a band with. And he asked if he can borrow his record player, his vinyl player, so he can listen to the album that he is on. And so they start listening to it. And the first track, if you're familiar with Back in Black, is Hell's Bells. And that's kind of the tribute to Bon. And so it was one of the songs that Brian was most worried about. And Brian had said when they were recording, Mutt kept telling him to go higher. He wanted his voice higher. He wanted it higher. He kept pushing him. So they start listening to the album, and his friend hears like the first 3 or 4 lines of lyrics. And he says, "Jonah, you're way too high. This sounds awful." And Brian said they listened to a few more bars of it, and Brian was so depressed because he thought he had ruined AC/DC, so he didn't even listen to the rest of Hell's Bells. They stopped the record, and he went to a pub and got blackout drunk because he was convinced that he had ruined AC/DC. How amazing is that? That is unbelievable to me. Number one, that he didn't even hear it. I guess that's normal for mixing stuff, but he didn't even hear it. Number two, I've ruined them. I've ruined one of the best bands in the world.
Come on down to Geordie land. Everybody have a go and get your brown nail and dozy dough.
All right, there's high pitch Brian. He's not quite hitting the Back in Black album there, but he's getting pretty damn close. And you can tell that Mutt might have listened to this and was like, that's all we need for AC/DC. Yeah, you could probably, I can understand. Mutt would have heard this or heard versions of him doing that and was like, more of that. Higher, Brian. All right, let's go back to Fraternity. Oh, a beautiful little breakdown there, huh? I didn't look up the guitarist's name. Well, I did, but I've got the tab closed now, and I'm not reopening it. But that lead guitar player, boy, his guitar sounds beautiful, doesn't it? I don't know if we call that a solo, maybe some fills or whatever, but gorgeous. The tone he was getting off that guitar, absolutely gorgeous. I'm such a dumb man when it comes to music. I know a little bit about guitar, but everything else I'm a complete moron. So can somebody help me? I mean, I know earlier he was playing a flute of some sort. Was that it? What wind instrument is this? Is this a didgeridoo? I should have looked this up. Embarrassing. A few years later, this man would be on the back of a flatbed trailer, middle of, is it Melbourne? I think it was, playing bagpipes. Amazing. God damn, that man had a voice, didn't he? Jesus, what a loss. Wow, what a cool song, right? I mean, it makes me feel like I want to eat an edible and play D&D. Doesn't it you? Like you want to get together with your friends, have some snacks, maybe have a nice campaign where everybody lives through it. It's fun. All right, let's go back to Geordie and let them finish up.
Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Well, don't do that. Mama, what you doing to me? Don't do that, don't do that. Mama, what you doing to me? Don't do that, don't do that. Mama, what you doing to me? Don't do that, don't do that. Mama, what you leave me be? Don't do that, don't do that.
I mean, that's pure Chuck Berry. I understand why the press was saying, oh, they're Slade, oh, they're sweet. Or, I mean, that's just pure rock and roll right there. Those double stop slides. And that's 100% Little Richard, isn't it? Hey! And Brian specifically mentions in the book that Little Richard's Tutti Frutti was one of the first songs that he ever heard that made him think he liked music. Absolutely true. It was Little Richard's Tutti Frutti that made him think I like music. Because before that, they were in the middle of northern England, didn't get great radio reception, and what they did get was like boring shit on the BBC. He said that he just thought he didn't like music. And as a kid who grew up around country music, completely understand. It wasn't until I heard acdc and Van Halen that I thought, you know what, I might like this stuff called music. It doesn't depress me anymore. And Brian says essentially the same thing in the book. How much fun those boys are having. Those are some fun lads, aren't they? Up there playing their rock and roll and having a good time. Wow. Well, you know, one of the things that I also liked about the book, and I'm not going to tell you too much simply because I want you to get his book. It's worth it if you like AC/DC. If you just like rock and roll, it's a neat trip through one person's eyes of rock and roll. But Brian does write about how he had met Bon when he was on tour with Geordie, and it's one of the biggest regrets of his life that he was a little bit too drunk to remember it very well. He does remember him. He remembers seeing him at a show because Fraternity was opening up for Geordie. He remembers seeing him there and loving his voice, but not particularly caring for the genre that Fraternity was playing in, but loving Bon's voice. He remembers meeting him, and then remembers meeting him later that night. It's a whole little adventure that they go on. I'm not going to spoil that for you. Get the book. But he does write, it's one of the greatest regrets that he doesn't really remember that evening very well. He says that he didn't learn that he had met Bon until after Bon had died and right about the time he was getting hired for AC/DC, when he put two and two together and remembered, holy shit, I met that guy. And it's one of the greatest regrets of his life that he doesn't remember it, which is What a shame, right? And I said we're not going to choose on this. It's like a bacon buddy versus a sausage roll. It's a long way when you want to get a sausage roll, and you can't pick. You can't pick, so I'm not even going to entertain that. But I think the decision we'll come to at the end of this, and I think it's one that Brian himself would agree with, and even says in the book, is that what a loss. What a loss with Brian, with Bon Scott, right? I mean, that man still had a lifetime of music in front of him. What an absolute loss that it was. And, I mean, when you read about what Brian went through to get to acdc, what a journey that guy went on and is still going on, fighting with his hearing, still wanting to get on stage and feel that energy. What a shame that is, too. What a challenge he has to overcome. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed this one. I know I had fun with it. Again, we're not going to do the thing. One's better than the other. We ain't doing that. But let me know in the comments some of your memories. I know I've got a lot of folks who have seen our acdc stuff, and they love sharing their memories of seeing the original lineup live. And boy, I love reading about those memories. So if you've got those memories, you got memories of seeing Brian that you want to share with me, let me know. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, do all the things, you know the things. And take care of yourselves, folks. And I'll see you soon.